Hello everyone, I am Dr. Ajay Kumar MV. I am the Deputy Director for Center for Operational Research in International Union Against Tuberculosis and Lung Disease. In this presentation, I am going to take you through the steps involved in installing EpiData software and other preparatory steps that are required before we begin to use the tool. Let's take a step back and ask this question. Why do we need a course on data entry? Now, data entry has been described as the Cinderella of research methods, the most neglected. It's indeed very, very true. If you look at all the components of research, starting from developing a research question, to developing a protocol, to data collection, data entry, data analysis, and writing it up as a scientific manuscript, among these, probably the most neglected is data entry. It's not even taught in most medical and public health schools. And I graduated from one of the most prestigious public health schools, medical colleges in India, and I was not taught anything about quality assurance during data entry. There was an article published in International Journal of Tuberculosis and Lung Disease. It reviewed all the published articles in 2008. And one of the findings was that only less than 5% of the articles published met the highest standards in data quality. Now, in data quality, the highest standard is if you have done double data entry, if you have entered the data twice and cross-checked and validated and resolved all the discrepancies, now that is considered a benchmark in assurance of data quality. Now, only 5% of the articles actually met that standard. And most of the articles didn't even mention anything about data quality. Now, this is a little concerning that, the authors do not think it's important. They don't mention it in their published articles. The reviewers don't question it. Editors don't question it. Journals don't even ask for it. And when I look at all the reporting standards like Consort or START or STROBE, this is not even mentioned as one of the criteria in reporting. So, there seems to be an unquestionable assumption that data quality is anyway ensured. Now, this unquestionable assumption is actually questionable. And that's the reason we have emphasized data quality a lot in operational research courses conducted by us in collaboration with MSF. And we have also started this in our short courses, which is an initiative to introduce the concept of quality assurance in data entry into the medical colleges and academic institutions, and hope it becomes a part of their curriculum someday. Are data entry errors so common? Why are we making a big deal about it? They are very common. In fact, to err is human. And one of the most concerning things for me is that the health outcomes that we study are rare. Let's take an example. So, for example, India has the highest burden of tuberculosis in the world. And in terms of absolute numbers, every year it crosses 2 million cases. But if you look at what's the prevalence of tuberculosis in India, it could be something like 250 to 300 per 100,000 population, 100,000 population, which means in terms of percentages, it could be 0.2 or 0.3%. Now, many people ask me this question: what proportion of errors are acceptable? Is it 10% or 5%? And you will also note in some articles, in published articles, researchers state that they have verified 10% of their data. And in that 10%, they found 5% errors, which they corrected. Fine. But what about the rest of the 90% of the data that they didn't check? What about the errors in that portion of the data? How do you correct them? And even if you assume it's going to be 5%, are you okay that you allow an error rate of 5%? Assuming, coming back to our original premise of prevalence of TB being 0.2% or 0.3%, can you allow 5% and think it's fine? It would change entirely the direction of results. So I think this particular approach of taking a cutoff error percentage is not really an ideal one. We have to ensure that we minimize the errors as much as possible. Remember, garbage in, garbage out. So if there are errors in data entry, no matter how sophisticated is your analysis, it's not going to be correct. So unless we are diligent about this and correct all the errors, they often go unnoticed and we may be making wrong conclusions. Let's briefly look at how EpiData came into being. Many of you might have heard of this software, EpiInfo 6.04D. It was a DOS-based software and probably one of the cleverest public health softwares ever developed. And it was developed by the United States CDC, Center for Disease Control, in the 1980s for its EIS officers. Of course, it was based on DOS operating system at that time. But with the world changing from DOS to Windows and several versions of the same, it became increasingly difficult to use this software. And I hear that Windows 7 and the later versions do not read EpiInfo 6.04D anymore. So it's a complete burial of sorts. So to address this particular challenge, there were two approaches, two schools of thought. One school of thought was that this software has everything we need. All we need to do is we have to make it compatible with Windows. The other school of thought was that anyway we are changing, let's change the architecture, the structure, everything about the software. The CDC took the latter approach and created EpiInfo for Windows. There was EpiInfo 2000 and there were several versions, which I guess now it's called as EpiInfo 7. The main difference was that it is now based on Microsoft Access database instead of simple text files. And there were two kinds of implications. One, it required access to a proprietary software, Microsoft Access. Although, there is an agreement between CDC and Microsoft and it is part of the software, but it still remains a proprietary tool. The second thing is this particular change in structure made the file sizes extremely large. Even an empty database went into, at least megabytes of file size. And installation of this software required interference with the operating system and several DLL files. Whereas the other approach where they thought EpiInfo 6.04D has everything that we need, let's retain that simplicity and just make it compatible with Windows. Now this was a group called EpiData Association in Denmark, and that's how EpiData came into being. And why are we preferring EpiData to EpiInfo in this course? First of all, not many tools are available for data entry. We told about EpiInfo, EpiData. There's one more sophisticated tool called CS Pro. Now CS Pro also is a software developed by the US government, and it's designed basically for large surveys and census data. So for example, if we conduct census of India, 1.25 billion people, we need a sophisticated database to handle such kinds of data. And for those situations, we need CS Pro. But for most of our needs in operational research, probably EpiInfo or EpiData is enough. But we prefer EpiData because it does not interfere with the operating system when you install it. And I'll show you very quickly how that works. Number two, it is open access and there's a great online support which is available. There is a forum to which you can ask questions and get clarifications. And there are several other reasons. It's a small software, the file sizes are extremely small, easy for sharing in resource constrained settings where internet connections are not that great. It's a simple software, basic text files. It's a stable software, speedy to install and sufficient for our purposes. As I told you, it's a small software. So if you look at the sizes, EpiInfo 6 was 3.89 MB. EpiInfo 2000 is about 64 mega, whereas EpiData is just 2.84 MB. It's a simple software. As I told you, all the files that we use, the quest file, the rec file, and the check file, we will come to know more about these files, but all of these are simple, straight text files. It's a very stable software. I've rarely seen it crashing. And even if it crashes, it happens when an operating system is jeopardized. You will lose only the one record on which you are currently working. The rest of the database remains safe. Installation happens as a breeze, almost as fast as EpiInfo or twice as fast as EpiInfo 2000. In terms of data quality, it enables us to achieve double entry and validation, the highest benchmark in achieving quality assurance of data. One of the basic assumptions that is involved, the basic premise of double entry and validation is that if two people independently enter the data and then we compare the two, the probability that both of them make the same mistake in the same data field, in the same record, is extremely rare. So if we compare these two independently entered databases and make all the corrections, it probably resolves all the errors that can happen, or minimizes to a great extent the errors that can happen in data entry. And EpiData can help you achieve that higher standard in data quality. And it's safe. You can encrypt your files with confidential information. You can password protect your data files. So EpiData allows for that. And finally, it's freely available for use and distribution from this particular website, epidata.dk. And as I told you, there are two modules in EpiData software. One is for entry, other one is for analysis. And look at the size of EpiData entry, 967 KB, less than 1 mega. Now, I haven't seen a software which is less than 1 mega in size and so smart. Let's look at installation of EpiData. There are two ways of installing EpiData. One, if you have access to internet and have administrator rights to install new software into your computer. If you have it, go to the internet, go to this website epidata.dk, go to download EpiData entry, download the setup file, double click on it and proceed as you install any other software. If you do not have administrative rights, then how do you install? Then I would suggest you go to the course folder, software, and unzip the folder into the root of the C drive. Once you do that, you will have a folder called EpiData. And within that folder, look for the exe files. You should look for two exe files. One is called epidata.exe and the other one is called epidatastat.exe. And once you do that, create desktop shortcuts for those two files and you are ready for beginning to work with EpiData. Isn't that very simple? So let me show you. So this is the software folder in the course material that we have provided, and there is a line there. You can see if you have no administrator rights. So please go and you can see a zip file here. Click on that and it will help you save the file, and it will probably go to your default downloads and you will have a zip file, epidata software package.zip. If you right click on that file and say open with Windows Explorer, you get this window, and then you can click extract all files. Select your destination, whatever it's going to be. But for our course purpose, I would request you to all of you do it into the root of the C drive. Browse, go to C drive, and then say extract. Once you do that, you must have a folder in the root of the C drive called EpiData. Now this is what we want to do. If you open that particular software, you have to locate two files. One is epidata.exe, the other one is epidatastat.exe. Now what's happening is I have opened my software, but I can't see extensions. I can't see which is the .exe file here. If you encounter something like this, you have to do a small change into your folder options. For some reason, Windows hides all the file extensions. So if you want to make the file extensions visible, what I would recommend is go to Organize, click on Folder and Search options. Please note that all of these things are with respect to Windows 7. If you are working with a different operating system, then there might be slight changes in the way you find. But in any case, you have to find folder and search options. And once you find that, there are several tabs. Go to the View tab in this dialog box and look for Hide extensions for known file types. Normally it is ticked. By default, Windows ticks this. That means it wants to hide extensions. What we want you to do is untick it, and so that the extensions are visible. So if you come back now you can clearly see here epidata.exe. Extensions are now visible. Now what I want you to do is right click on that particular file epidata.exe and send to create a desktop shortcut. The moment you do that, you'll get a desktop shortcut to which you can double click and open EpiData. Now do the same thing for epidatastat.exe. Now epidata.exe is for EpiData entry, and epidatastat.exe is for EpiData analysis. If your preference is to work from a quick launch bar, please do whatever is required to create quick launch bar icons, but a desktop shortcut will work as fine. So what's unique about EpiData installation? The first thing is that although it's a Windows-based software, it does not interfere with the Windows setup. All the files that are required for operating the software is placed in a single directory, and there is no trace of any DLL files anywhere in the system. In fact, you can carry this entire directory in a USB stick and plug it into any computer and just start working. So it does not require the routine installation process. There are other things I would like you to set up before we begin. I would request you to create a new folder called epidata_course and put it into the root of the C drive. This will help us have a coordinated group activity, and as facilitators we know exactly where you're working, and which will help us troubleshoot in case you have any issues. I would request also to set your system language to either India English or UK English, so that the date is read as date, month and year format. And then I would also like you to access help file and see if you are able to access help file. If you are using Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8 or later operating systems, you will not be able to access help file, for which you will need to install a Microsoft plugin. help in EpiData is not working, what to do. This is very important to ensure that the help file is working. So if it's not working, you need a plugin. You have to download a Windows help program. So how do we do that? Now go to EpiData software, and if you click on help and click on the contents, then you will find this particular message. Why can't I get help from this program? Then there is a link called Microsoft Help and Support. If you go and click on that particular link, it will take you to a place from where you can download the help file. Now here you have to determine and find out the right file or the right Microsoft plugin for your operating system. Now there are two things that you have to look at. One is your operating system. Is it Windows Vista 7 or 8? The second thing is whether you have a 32-bit operating system or a 64-bit operating system. You have to find this out and accordingly choose the right plugin. Keep clicking and it will take you through the next processes. So let's say you have to go a particular thing, click on continue. It will begin a routine process of validating if your Windows software is genuine or not. Continue to go through that process, click next, and once you have validated, then you have access to a place where you can download the plugin. Now to cut short all of this, before that I just want to show you how you can determine Windows version and system type. There are two ways. One is you can click on start and type MS-Info32 in your start search and press enter, and then it will give you what is your operating system and whether it's a 32-bit x86 based, which means a 32-bit operating system, or a 64-bit operating system. The other way of finding that out is go to my computer, right click on it, click on properties, and then you can find which operating system that you are using and whether it's a 32-bit or a 64-bit. Now once you find that out and you choose your appropriate plugin and download and install. Now if you don't have internet connection and don't want to go through all this process, just go to the course content that we have provided, go to the folder software. This plugin is already present there. Now click on that icon and install the plugin. Of course, you will need administrator privileges to install this particular plugin. Okay, finally check the following. You must have a folder called EpiData in C drive. This is the folder which has all the software. You must have a folder called EpiData_course in C drive. This is where we are going to do all our work in this particular module. You must have a folder temp in C drive in case you have created. You must have desktop shortcuts or quick launch icons so that you can start EpiData entry or analysis software whenever you want, and you should be able to access help file. These are the things I want you to ensure.